All right, great. So again, this is Filecoin Core Devs meeting 27 today on September 23rd. Great to have you all with us again, even though it's early in the morning for those of us on the West Coast. I think today's meeting is mostly going to be devoted to talking through a lot of the upcoming FIPs that we have in our queue right now. But that being said, we do have sort of an open agenda. So if you have any other topics you'd like to add, feel free to drop them in the chat, or you can just bring them up ad hoc when you have a chance to speak. So starting out, does the Lotus team have any updates for the group?
Yeah, I can share. We're mostly running the 111.3 RC train and basically plan to ship it out next Tuesday. All activities are related to that release currently. So yeah, I'm focusing on that. Nothing much to share.
All right.
Forest team?
Yo. Yeah, so we are back on B5 mainnet, mainnet, I guess. Yeah, currently, we're just continue working on our push for our first release. And as part of that, we're doing we're doing like test vector integration and all that stuff. And we're also currently working on some of the older state migrations that we didn't get to do earlier on. But now we're implementing it, so that's fun. Sync with calibration net as well the other day. Yeah, so I guess, TLDR, just pushing for the release.
Sounds good. Eric, can you remind me and everyone else what the release timeline currently looks like?
I think it looks like in another two weeks or 3 weeks or something like that. Can't, my laptop kind of really slow. Can't really pull it up. Hold on. But yeah, something like that. I think like 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks or something.
Cool. Yeah, it looks like
he says end of October.
Yep, perfect. That's 2 or 3 weeks. Sounds good. All right, thanks. Fuhan team.
Hi everyone. So on our side, we are still going through the internal security audit. It's taken a lot longer than we expected, and there is still no deadline set internally, just because there are some complications both on the security team side and our communication of the issues from our side. So I expect it to take at least 1.5 weeks, maybe 2 weeks. Then we'll probably have we're in the process of fixing stuff. Probably as the audit will be finished, we'll have to spend some more time on addressing the issues that were found or not found. We'll see. And then we'll go ahead and also release our solution. We are not in as in a hurry as of now, so we are aiming towards having more quality solution from the day one than releasing it faster. So that's the approach we are taking when we make decisions regarding whether we want to release early or later. So otherwise, we are finishing with minor development. The main functionality being finished already. Well, the development of the main functionality being finished, and we are starting to testing it together with other components and interop testing with Lotus node. And we are also introducing a more advanced test suite for the node itself that will be testing how certain scenarios or use cases working on the in scale and under different context and load. Namely, we are currently preparing a test suite that will be testing how several nodes communicating under different context and different network load will work with several deals put to the node in a different order and different load amount. So yeah, and maybe if you are touching this topic, there are also some, and this test suite could also be used, for example, by Lotus or anyone else who is using the same API as Lotus does or Fuhon does. So maybe it's worth mentioning here that this test suite can be used by others, but maybe other implementation also have implementations also have some test suites that could be interexchanged with, for example, our implementation or Lotus one. So we can integrate a more complete test suites for each other. So on the update side, that would be it. And any thoughts on test suites?
Yeah, we don't have anything similar in Lotus, so I think I'd be interested in trying to point that at Lotus and seeing what happens. In general, I wonder if we potentially want to seed the idea of trying to create a uniform battery of tests that's implementation agnostic, that does a lot of this like very, very functional end-to-end testing of interesting workflows. Deal making in particular is an interesting one. So yeah, so I do wonder if we can if this can be the start of that, and we can maybe generalize it to become something that we test all implementations against.
Great. Any additional comments, thoughts, follow-on needs? All right. And last but not least is the Venus team.
Hi everyone. Yeah, for Venus team, as planned, we expect we have a new release next week. Yeah, in this release, we hope we can deliver Venus marketing module, so that the Venus clients can have deals with the Venus market and the Venus pool. This Venus market will provide the basic functions which is compliant with Lotus, so that the Lotus client can also make deals with the Venus nodes. And so they are totally compliant. Before we have that release, we are doing some work and some testing, including some refactors and implementing the dual market interfaces and working on the document, something like this. And also we need to have Veda Signer to support deals, etc. In addition to this, and we're also have done something to fix some issues. For example, we fixed the page channel initiation error and the window post scheduler bug. Something like this. I think that's the major things we have. And another thing that we are now still in the incubation program milestone 1, but we would very soon we will launch the incubation program milestone 2. In milestone 2, we'll have the master program. So we have an announcement to ask technical engineers in the community to join us to support the Venus program, or to have more small miners to join us. Okay, I think that's all. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Stephen. I also think I remember you mentioning last week that you would have your Mark design specs that were shared both in GitHub and on Slack with the other implementers. Were those distributed, or is that still outstanding?
Yeah, we had we had published on the and on GitHub as a discussing. I will send the link here.
Great. Perfect. Thank you. Great. All right. And any other questions for Stephen? All right. Then while he drops the design spec link over into the chat, updates from the foundation. Dudley, you want to go first?
Yeah, not too much specific relative to the implementations this week, I'm afraid. We do have a couple of audits going on. I'm going to try to get there's a contract we're trying to work on with Sigma Prime to get a fuzzer built, which will be part of the deliverables of that will be a Docker image and instructions on how to set that up with GitHub Actions. I'm not sure how simple it will be depending on how you guys have organized your repos, but ideally we can get this fuzzer on every implementation to like whenever a new build is pushed that it sets this up and runs the tests. We'll see how efficient it is. I imagine this coming to be finished Q1 of next year though. In terms of the bug bounty program, so we had a little, a big reorg inside of PL and FF. We will be reaching out eventually. That's about it.
Cool, sounds good. Thanks, Dudley. For my end with FIPS, there's a ton going on. And I think that most of the rest of the meeting is going to be dedicated to talking about the FIPS that are going to be opened, are presently opened, and specifically looking at the timelines around implementation for all of those. I think what's best is if we start with the drafts that have already been pushed, so that way you can quickly reference and see them. I also think that these are things which we've already reviewed during this meeting. And at the end, ZX, if you want to jump in and introduce the new draft that you have pushed as well, you can introduce it for the first time to the rest of the team. Great, so let me share my screen. All right, let me move the Zoom controls. All right, so the very first, sorry, here we go. So perfect. So the first one we can review is FIP 19. This is the infamous snap deals that we've gone over in previous meetings. Last I've heard, the planned implementation for this FIP is going to be 2021 Q1 at the earliest. But we can actually begin to move this through the FIP process where we share it with everyone, et cetera, gather feedback and refine the draft text on whatever timeline is most convenient for the rest of the implementations. I think the Lotus team is probably closest to the development of this technically. Are you guys able to give specifics or preferences for that FIP process timeline?
Yeah, definitely. Let me just see who's in the call. Okay, we don't have anyone from kind of the folks that are most immediately working on this. But yeah, in terms of timeline, I think this one is kind of one of the more like it's a single module that's changing basically, which is the proofs library, which obviously all of our implementations are sharing. So the proofs team is kind of the sole driver of this. The work involved in actors or the implementation side of things is fairly minimal. So they're kind of off to the races with this. They have a design fully spec'd out. I don't think the full kind of circuit design has been shared yet, but I think that's going to be incorporated into the FIP. They're looking at, yeah, as you said, probably a month to 2 months of work. Well, a month of core work starting, so basically the month of October. Unfortunately, after that, there are a bunch of subsequent steps that need to happen. It needs to get audited, obviously. We're hoping to do 2, an internal and an external one. Dragon can speak to the timeline of that a bit more. And then for the snarks, the trusted setup process needs to run. So there's kind of a lot of procedure that needs to happen after implementation, which is what pushes us into a Q1 2022 timeline, as you said. Parallel to that, I think the spec factors team and will be doing the adding the new method that's needed, but that's you know, a very, very small piece of the picture relative to the proofs work. So yeah, I think all in all, I'd be happy if we kind of have all of the code ready by the end of this year, maybe even running on a test network. And then we can look at a good time in the first quarter of 2022 for the upgrade. You don't want it to be too close to the New Year holidays or too close to holidays in China. So kind of that's what will probably dictate the timeline is my guess.
Okay, great, sounds good. So then I think when we think about actually moving this towards approved FIP status, it's more of a question of how do we think about this FIP with all of the others that are going to be slated to be pushed through too. So it's helpful to have the background knowing that technically we do have some time with this one, since obviously this is also the most complicated in terms of total network impact. All right. The next one is a proposal to add a return value to the withdraw balance command. Any insight on the timeline here?
I can give a quick update. So the Specs Actors project has a complete implementation of this currently. My estimate for the Forest team to implement is this is about a day. If you're generous, most of the time went into testing, and there are test vectors now with this one, so there should be some built-in testing for the Forest team. So yeah, it's basically ready whenever we want it.
All right, wonderful. The next one, FIP 21, correct quality calculation on expiration. Maybe Zen, you can help us with this one too.
Yeah, so this one, I think this is new. I don't think this has come up in an implementers sync meeting yet. So the 10-second summary is that when a sector containing verified deals is extended, the quality of that sector is overcounted. So there's just a bug there. This FIP proposes fixing it by scaling it back to the fair quality. This one is not yet implemented. My suspicion is that it's going to be similar to the withdrawal balance in time. So about a day for another implementation to follow along, maybe a day or two for me to get in the testing associated with it.
Great, thank you. And since this one hasn't been formally presented yet to the rest of the team, does anyone have any questions or anything in particular they want to point to on this proposal?
Yeah, I do. I presumably the same bug is shared by Rust actors, Eric. Like the same kind of overcounting is happening there, just because we were doing it wrong. Okay.
It should be, or else we. I mean, we haven't seen a consensus issue. So, yeah.
Gotcha. Sounds good.
All right. Anyone else? Great. All right, next, bad deals don't fail when you comment published storage deals. This one I believe has been reviewed already. Zen, this one's also authored by you.
Yeah, so there has been some discussion about this. I think I'm open to hear what others think, especially storage providers who this might be impacting. But after reflecting on this for a while with other members of the team, my current recommendation is that we put this on ice. We put it into the deferred status, or maybe even closed down. Basically, the
so you want to do that for the published storage deals as well? Or for
sorry. No. I thought we were talking about the commit deal. I'm sorry. Yes, this one is great. Yeah, so that does that. Sorry, it does not apply to this one. This one is good. It's the implementation is almost done on my end. I need to add tests at this point and maybe clean some things up. The point of this is to make the error handling easier for published storage deals so that one bad deal won't fail the whole batch. And yeah, it's taken like maybe closer to like 2-3 days. Engineering time following along should be a little bit less. Yeah, I can answer questions. Sorry again about confusing this with the other one.
No, that's okay. I was actually going to ask about commit storage deals, but we can move that to deferred and we won't have to worry about it. The published storage deals failure was actually brought up on the past two storage provider working groups, at least for the North America group, and they were broadly in favor and excited about this proposal. So I'll try and rally the troops to provide actual feedback on GitHub at least so that it's a little bit easier to track. But I think there was a lot of excitement for this one, a small change, but one that'll help a lot. So.
That sounds good. One quick thing to just flag with both this FIP as well as the adding the return value to the withdrawal balance, in addition to the actors work itself, there probably is going to be a little bit of tooling change that's needed, depending on what kind of client-side tooling the various implementations have. So you probably want to change the withdrawal balance and published storage deals, the things that call those methods to in some way process this new return value. it kind of depends on how much, like if you have a full markets module, then you probably care about the published storage deals one more. If you've got like a large CLI, then you probably want to display the value returned by withdrawal balance, that kind of thing. Obviously, that's not blocking the upgrade itself. That can happen at any time in the future, but that's something worth flagging.
Ayush, in general, do you know what the procedure is for making known those changes and needs? So for like external tools or anything else, is the responsibility of like the tooling agent or developer to actually monitor the implementation releases, or do you actively work with them?
Good question. Right now, there's not a lot of structure in place for how that happens. So by default, the onus falls entirely on anyone building tooling or libraries or client-side things to follow up with our changes and then pull whatever's needed. That's a very interesting question, though. At the very least, I think one immediate thing we can do is the way we summarize all the protocol changes in a single document when we have a network upgrade. We could probably add a kind of suggested tooling changes or things to look out for if you are someone running anything client side on Filecoin, but we don't do that right now.
Okay.
Something I'll add on to this. These two changes, the published storage deals and withdrawal balance changes, were almost small enough that it wasn't clear if a FIP was really needed. But one of the main reasons why it was clear that we did need a FIP was that these return values are changing. And part of the intention anyway with filing these FIPs was to make it clear and in the public record what will be changing. It doesn't seem like there's currently a norm where people who write client tooling actually check up on FIPs and like keep up with the proposed protocol changes. But ideally, that will be a norm that gets adopted. And the way these two FIPs are written, maybe we could work on trying to make it clearer from the text of the FIP, but ideally the text of the FIP should make it clear that tooling changes will be necessary.
That's really helpful to know, especially as we continue to work on and think about ways that we want to make FIPs more accessible, more obvious, right? Like down the line, it shouldn't be that you have to go in and read every single one unless you're involved in a particular use case. So something to think about is how that information is flagged and how we can change the norms around checking, updates, specs, things like this. Especially now that we're having an increasing number of FIPs going through, and the conversations around FIPs that will be pushed through in the future seems to be increasing as well. So good note. All right, so the last one is the tip set tiebreak rule. I don't think Jennifer is on the call today, but I think this is also a relatively small change. If anyone has any updates on the timeline, Ayush, you're one of the authors, maybe you can help us.
Yeah, definitely. So this is one that we discussed 2 weeks ago, if I remember correctly. Timeline, I wrote this and I made the change itself in about 15 minutes in Lotus yesterday, because in a Lotus change, not an actors change. So all of the implementations will have to make it. Yeah, so the work itself is small. As always, majority of the work is in writing good tests for it. But otherwise it's definitely not a lot of work. One thing that I did want to call out about this is the last time we spoke about it, there was a little bit of an open question around exactly what to do if essentially if the spec as currently written is a little vague about how to break the tie. Examples are if there isn't a minimum ticket that breaks the tie for some reason, or if the tip sets aren't of the same size for some reason. All of these are very, very unlikely cases, and I called them out as the 2 interesting cases there. Essentially, I just wanted to say that the decision that at least that I have in the FIP right now is to explicitly leave behavior unspecified there, because these are such unusual cases. I think that's fine. So the only actual change that will be happening in the spec as a result of this FIP is to kind of go and explicitly say, we're not specifying what you do here, which by default will probably wind down to you stay with whichever tip set you saw first. But yeah, and then obviously I think all of the implementations are just conveniently ignoring this aspect of the spec, fully including Lotus. So the work is more to just go and implement the spec itself. But yes, certainly not a lot of work.
Great. So what this is sounding like is, at least for definitely FIP 23, which is the tip set tiebreak rule, and then perhaps also FIP 20 and 21, so return the withdrawal balance, and no, I'm sorry, FIP 22, which is published storage deals. It sounds like whatever implementation needs have either already been built or could quickly be built. And since we do have the full FIP specification, we can go ahead and move these to be a little bit more accessible within the broader Filecoin community, and perhaps next week move them into last call status. So once we do that, there will be 2 weeks for people to raise any opinions, thoughts, ideas, etc. And if no critical concerns are raised during that period of time, we can consider them passed and accepted. Does anyone have any concerns with moving forward in that way? Again, this would be,
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to confirm that again, it sounds like this would be appropriate for FIP 20, 21, or no, sorry, not 21. 21 is on hold for now. FIP 20, 22, and 23.
So going back to 21, that's on hold. What's blocking 21 right now?
Sorry, it's not on hold. That was a bad way to phrase it, but I believe Zen said that it's not yet ready to be implemented.
I'm sorry, no, I think I must have misspoken. It's ready. I just haven't gotten around to it yet.
Oh, sure. Okay. So then there's no reason why all 4 of these then couldn't go through sort of the same timeline.
Yeah.
Yep, I think so. So with that timeline, what would the like kind of go live on mainnet date be? I'm just wondering.
So we would move to accepted status in about 3 weeks' time. We can make it quicker if you prefer, but after that point, we would look for them to be implemented as well.
So at some point after 3 weeks, yeah. The kind of internally, the date we were looking at for going live on mainnet was October 25th, which is a month away. Which I think from an implementation perspective, there's no concerns around hitting. Like we're saying, almost everything is on the order of a week work. So yeah, is that feasible within this timeline? Maybe just on the short end of it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we can certainly delay a bit too if it's folks' preferences. Also, it's sort of a gray area, but one thing we can think of too is that if there are certain lifts that are bigger for certain teams than others, either because of the technical requirements or because of your team's internal capacity, FIPs can also live in accepted status. So they can go through the FIP process and be approved, so to speak. They don't have to, I think, maybe the standard has been different in the past, but if teams are still working on implementation, as long as there is a roadmap for implementation, it's okay if they're not immediately ready by that date.
Yep, that makes sense. Yeah, so yeah, I think I don't have any major objections. So yeah, so I guess these FIPs will. So I guess the question is, what does it take for? And this is me trying to understand the FIP process itself. What does it take for a FIP to get to accepted? It waits for community feedback for 2 weeks. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the standard we're looking at now is that whenever a FIP draft is made available, it's open for feedback, et cetera. Once we move it to last call status, there's about 2 weeks. We can really specify whatever timeline we want, but in the past it's been 2 weeks. And that's during a period of time where you're effectively signaling that the draft is as complete as we want it to be. And we've already incorporated all feedback and sort of alternative suggestions for ways of doing things. At that point, if someone were to raise like considerable issues or criticisms of the implementation as written, that's when we would work on deciding whether or not it would be accepted. For a lot of these, though, I don't expect that we would get a lot of pushback or alternative technical suggestions for them. So as long as we don't, we would just consider them accepted after that 2 week period. If we do, then we would pursue alternative ways of decision making. But again, I don't know if it's necessary to pre-consider given the scope of these proposals.
Yeah, gotcha. Sounds good. So is the proposal to move these to last call essentially at the end of this meeting, or?
So one thing is that these have just been pushed into the repo for the first time and given FIP numbers. So no one has been made or been flagged that these are available. So what we'll do is I will begin to do that. So I will more explicitly share them across a bunch of the Filecoin project Slack channels. We can also put them on the doc for discussion at different working groups as it's appropriate. And then whatever timeline we want to support, if it's October 25th, whatever 2 weeks out from that is, that's when they'll move to last call status. And all of those timelines will be updated in the header, the preamble for all of the FIPs themselves. And I'm going to be putting together just a project board to make it easier to track these things. so that you can actually see those things now, and you can see the timeline as the FIPS move through that process.
Gotcha. Sounds good. Okay, so sounds like you have a fairly well done process already. I was mostly just trying to understand it. Thanks.
Oh yeah. Well, it's still kind of a messy process, so your questions are still helpful.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah, and thanks for all of the guidance in terms of your own internal timelines. Does anyone else? I have a chat that I can't see. Oh, thanks, Dragon. Yeah, the project board actually should be a light lift. I'm probably going to get this figured out by the end of the week, so I'll drop a link when it's there, and if anyone wants to give feedback, they can. I think the project board might actually be a good way for also housing any checklists, any release notes of particular concern for a given FIP, whatever we want down the line. And we can use it as sort of a community ground for all the different implementations when thinking about technical development of different proposals. But we'll see when we get there.
Sounds great. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks. All right, so we have about 15 or so minutes left. ZX, do you want to speak a little bit about the draft you pushed the other day?
Yeah, sure. So do you want to open it and then I can just, yeah. Great, let me walk us through this. So let's recall a few key concepts. One is like what is base fee and what drives base fee, right? Base fee is driven by the supply and demand of the network bandwidth. And then like the principle here is basically whenever someone uses the protocol, whether it's to provide storage or to consume storage or just make payments, some amount of the Filecoin is being paid to the protocol. And then like, and how much that is depends on like the relative supply and demand at the moment. And that is driven by base fee. And then with hyperdrive, we introduced a 10-25x increase in the supply of like network bandwidth or TPS. So what balancer and discount do, right? I'm recalling this concept from like FIP 13 when they were first introduced. They basically balance the power between like small and large miners, passing the cost discount to like other method like public storage deals, and then aligning the aligning like miner who are or storage provider adding storage to the network by paying the network. So these two parameters kind of like effect this change through this concept called a crossover base fee. What that means is when you can look into like FIP 13 for more detail, but when it's above the crossover base fee, storage provider have a greater incentive to aggregate to basically free up more chain capacity and then reducing the base fee. And then when it's below the crossover base fee, the miners, it's more rational for storage providers to just add like single sector without aggregation. So there were actually lots of trade-off that went into like setting the parameter value, as we mentioned in this FIP. So one is like storage onboarding expectations. What is that equilibrium network crossover base fee? The return on providing storage on Filecoin and the cost of public storage deals. And then lastly, protocol revenue as well. So protocol revenue is a pretty key metric or new concept that you have been talking a lot about. If you go to token terminal, there's like actually a chart about like what the different protocol revenue for each protocol. And then if you vary the different time scale, you will see like the protocol revenue for Filecoin and other protocols at different time scale. So with hyperdrive, there was a 10 to 25x increase in the chain capacity, but the demand only picks up about 10 to 25x increase in the supply of chain bandwidth, but the demand only pick up about 2x, which is from about 30 petabyte a day to about 60 petabyte a day. So in terms of protocol revenue, it went down from about 150K or 200K Filecoin per day to just about 15 to 20K Filecoin a day. So what we're proposing here in this FIP is twofold. One is, first of all, to apply the same mechanism that is currently present at proof commit to also pre-commit, just because to be more in line with the principles in FIP 13, we should have done that in the last FIP. And then the second proposal here is like changing the batch balancer number from currently 2 nanofield to like 5 nanofield to basically accommodate and recalibrate to the reality of what is currently happening on the network. So there were actually some other values that we can propose for batch balancer. As I mentioned, there are different trade-offs. So if you scroll down, there is actually a table
Mm,
So there's actually a scroll down more. Maybe there's a lag. I'm not seeing it yet. Scroll down more.
I think there
More.
must be a lag.
Yeah. Oops. Maybe I overshot. Yeah. I think we overshot. There was a table there. There was a lag. Yep.
Yeah, the
here it
lag's
is.
about a minute behind, so it's going to scroll down again. Sorry.
Oscillation. So, but we can go to the. I'll wait for the table to show on my screen. Great. Yeah. So at under different balance of value, as I mentioned, right? They effect the crossover network base fee, which is determined in closed form by the formula above. So like there are different values that we can choose, and there's also corresponding different like public storage deal network fee. We don't want that to be too expensive, so you also just can't keep on increasing this number. And then what is the per unit sector network fee? And then what is the current sector annual return, right? So like the annual return is actually still pretty high relative to the network fee. And then like what is the daily projected protocol revenue under different crossover base fee? So that we think it could go different like different values, but we think 5 is a reasonable pick given all these trade-offs.
So I guess logistically, ZX, I think I'm just thinking about the storage providers in particular. They've been really proactive on topics like this, and network costs and barrier to entry have been a really strong point of focus for them. When directing them towards this proposal, usually the best way to do it is to be very targeted in what you're asking them to provide feedback on. Would you prefer that we direct them to this open question of the correct amount of nanofill to charge for the, or to propose for the batch balancer? Or do you want broader feedback on sort of the concept or change motivation for this proposal?
So we would like to hear from like, so when we propose this, we sort of put ourselves in the shoe of the protocol, right? So like there are many things that it matters to the protocol. And I think protocol revenue is one that really benefit the protocol long term. And then like even for storage providers, they are also like large stakeholders of the network. They're also very large token holders. So like I think these are all the consideration, but of course it's very hard to quantify what does it exactly mean to me, right? Because that the behavioral model might not be clear, and then different miner may have different model. So in terms of feedback, I think like I think it really, I feel like let's gather feedback. Like I would say like from my point of view, this is, let's say when we put ourselves in a shoe of protocol, we think this is a recommendation that we would like to recommend for folks to consider. We are not really forcing this number onto the community. I think at the end of the day, I think it's a discussion what would make sense for the protocol. And then we strongly believe that storage providers are big owners of the protocol as well.
Sure. Okay, great. Perhaps any other more technical questions?
Not for me. I think the idea to also be applying this batch balancer to the pre-commit batch makes a lot of sense. That sounds like something we should have just done in the first place. Yeah, the economics of it all, I don't understand as well, but seems reasonable. Do we have an estimation of implementation maybe? Like the implementation difficulty?
Yeah, it should be very simple. We're going to be, so if this goes through and when we decide on a number, if it does, then we'll change one constant. Then there's the matter of the pre-commit, applying the batch balancer stuff there. And that should also be pretty simple. So I would say about the same order as maybe the published storage deals FIP. So like 1 to 2 days.
Gotcha. And one question I had was, so currently the pre-commit batch, the pre-commit sector method is basically just a stub that calls the pre-commit batch method with a batch size of 1. What's gonna happen if you Yeah, will this new batch balancer be applied only above a certain size? Will we have to change that behavior? What's going to happen?
Yeah, so it will be applied above a size of 1. So whenever you batch pre-commit, then it'll be applied. So it depends on the implementation of your actors library. So I don't know how Forest does it exactly, but I'm guessing it's somewhat similar to what we do in Specs actors. And the technology that we'll use is an if statement to check the length while maintaining the code sharing.
That's good.
Cool. And ZX or Zen, do you guys have a preferred timeline for which you'd like this FIP to be adopted or rejected? So I think your options are, with the 4 other FIPs that we're going to begin working on in the coming weeks, we can get this moved through by the end of October. Or if there's not like a particular rush for this, we can also wait until later November. The timeline's open-ended.
So I think the pre-commit batch thing is pretty like uncontroversial. I would like that to, if possible, be done by end of October. And then the question is, if we want to make the adjustment to the batch balancer, then we would like to gather more feedback from storage providers, right? Like, and potentially people doing analysis on the network, if there's any charts or projection, like that would be great as well, right? So that we can make a more informed decision together as a community. And then like as what Zen mentioned, that would just be setting the value of the constant depending on what the community decide, or not change the constant.
Cool. That sounds good. It sounds like then we will probably be shooting for after that first deadline of October 25th, but the block science team, if you're familiar with them, I think you probably are, they recently put together an analysis of another proposal that's not going to move forward. It's just a discussion topic related to the negative pricing for verified storage deals. They might be really interested in putting together like a separate analysis for this as well. So I'll reach out to them and see if they're interested in providing that, because it would be sort of a good community resource as well. And so hopefully if they're interested in working on it and we can get an analysis in like 2 or 3 weeks, then we can sort of orient our timeline around that to provide us with a benchmark.
Sounds good. We should be able to get a macro analysis pretty quickly. We've been building the digital twins for a situation like this. We should be able to get to something from them pretty quickly.
Awesome. Cool. Sounds good. All right. Any other questions, comments, ideas related to this, or really anything else?
Yeah, I have one question here. We discussed some FIPs here. I think yeah, none of them are very critical. I was thinking that there are 4 FIPs it could be done at the end of October. So yeah, do we expect a new release in yeah, maybe November or anytime before the Q1 next year, where we have the FIP 19. So I was thinking, that's a question about do we expect to have a new release within this year, including these FIPs we just discussed, which can be done in October, or we just have all this information ready, and we just wait to the next year?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's somewhat up for us to decide here. I think I would like to get all of these small things into a release, into a network upgrade that happens this year, end of October, November, whenever. Partly because there's nice improvements that we might as well get live as soon as possible, and partly because snap deals is a pretty big deal, and so de-scoping the size of that upgrade seems like a good idea just from a technical perspective. So yeah, I think a network upgrade, a smaller network upgrade with just these changes makes sense, but it's not set, like it's up for discussion, I guess.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, we could have this kind of incremental change and so that we don't have very much change at one time. Yeah, for example, yeah, next Q1. Okay, and also regarding this this proposal, yeah, JX, yeah, we just discussed about the batch balancer, and I was thinking that yeah, there is one new concept about the protocol revenue. I was thinking that is kind of new for most storage providers. There might be some discussion, yeah, between the service providers, and I would suggest we have this to be discussed in the service provider working group meeting to get some feedback. Yeah, for myself, after thinking about this, okay, and after I understand this, supportive for this, this FAPE, I think it's good for the whole ecosystem, but we need to have people understand this, because especially for the service providers who just enter the ecosystem and they need to grow their power. Actually, yeah, they will have higher cost for them. So, okay, I would think that there will be different opinions, and there you call it one process to have people to discuss and to understand this.
I totally agree, and would like to. I think like some kind of analysis, or like what Kaylin mentioned, like from block science or like some other folks, could also be useful in helping people understand this new concept and like put things into perspective.
Yeah. Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
I've also found that different stakeholders are usually particularly attuned to changes in cost. So they usually end up pointing out changes that even we perhaps didn't anticipate right away. Very rarely, I think, are there hidden elements related to changes to personal investment required for participation in the network, but it is good to point out. All right, so we're right at time. So I think that's going to be our meeting for this week. Again, if anyone has any follow-up questions, you're welcome to share them on Filecoin Project Slack, or you can message me directly and we can add them as an agenda topic for our meeting in 2 weeks. And again, as we move through all of these different FIPs, and the FIP process is still pretty open-ended, if you have any feedback about how we can do things better or make things clearer, specifically related to bringing particular FIPs to this meeting for presentation, timelining them out, et cetera, feel free just to comment openly in, again, Filecoin Project Slack, or you can message me privately as well. But we're always looking for ways to make things clearer and more approachable, especially when we have meetings with everyone in one place. So thanks again, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.